Welcome to Agape Social Justice, where we focus on love, truth, and justice. Welcome back, Agape family. It is season 2. I really can't believe we're already at season 2. We had our first episode air in January of 2023 and had 26 episodes. That in and of itself could have been 2 seasons, honestly. But we cannot believe that we're already at season 2. We're excited about what's happening this season. Actually, for me, I feel like I'm going to go even deeper in this season. And to start us out today, Walter is joining me so that we can talk about a preview of what's to come for season 2. And we hope that you enjoy. Give us some feedback too, by the way. Our social media, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Agape Social Justice, and on Twitter, or now I think it's called X, since we have filmed season 1, you can go to Agape Social Just, and that's how you can find us. So, you ready to dig right in?
It certainly does seem like last season with 26 episodes, like it was almost 2 seasons, and then it was in the dead of winter. And as you can probably see that, we've got this radiance about ourselves because we've been on vacation.
It's
and
hot, y'all.
And it's been summertime, so we've got a lot of sun upon us and whatnot. So it's good to be back. I know we've got a lot to talk about this season. And a lot's happening. I mean, we don't even have to talk about the election, but hey, we've just got a whole lot going on this particular season. And a lot's going to happen, and we're going to have some real great guests.
Yeah. So we're going to start out talking about some of our highlights and segue into where we see this season going. So your thoughts transitioning so during the summer, we had the replays, right? We had some of people's favorite episodes. I interviewed you actually and got some of your favorites. So that's what people were able to see during the summer. So moving into season 2, we're going to talk about some global perspectives as well, right? And I know you have Pastor Wilson who's coming on. So
an individual that I worked with when I was a Michigan State Trooper in the city of Inkster. He runs a ministry there that spans well beyond that of Inkster, and actually he's the only person to have a religious service in the UN on a regular basis. And he's got some stories. He's got some transformation stories. He's got some testimonies as it relates to bringing forth the word of God in that environment. So really excited about Pastor Wilson.
And the UN, you mean United Nations.
Yeah, the United Nations.
The United Nations.
Yeah. Not the underground nation. But yeah, the United Nations. Yes, it's going to be real exciting, with Pastor Wilson. Yeah, and then another friend of mine, as well as yours, and someone that I worked with again when I was a state trooper, the community service guy, Ahmad Hamad. And talk about Ahmad, and his organization.
So I think I met Ahmad when I was there to talk about one of our businesses. I believe I went to present to him about that. And of course, in meeting him and talking about the work that he does with the community, we just naturally connected, right?
Yes.
He's doing a lot of service. You find very few people who don't have an ulterior motive, who actually really want to service the community. And I found that he's that type of way.
Certainly.
And with his organization, they have a global focus, but there is a significant emphasis on working with the community, not just in Dearborn, but in Detroit and various aspects of Wayne County. He works very well with the law enforcement community, as you now know, from connecting with Ahmad. We've connected for many, many, many years now. At this point, we've gone to events that he's hosted with the Michigan Department of Corrections.
His annual banquet.
His annual banquet is the annual gala, which is coming up again. We probably need to promote that at some point on the show. And he talks to Border Patrol. I mean, there's just a number of different prominent, powerful people who are in our state who he's hosted meetings with. So we get an opportunity as community members to go in, to actually sit, to ask them questions as advocates and get responses so we can take that back to our various communities. So he's heavily engaged in the community. American Human Rights Council, AHRC.
Correct.
Is who Ahmad is with.
And and because of his involvement in the community, and oftentimes when people look at him, and obviously his name, which is or he's an Arab American. It's not all about Arab Americans. It's not about Palestinians. It's not about Israelis. It's about the people, America. And that's what I really appreciate about Ahmad is that, even though obviously he has his culture to always keep in mind, he's an American. He's American first, and he promotes that, and he promotes all of our rights.
And I have a lot of people who get confused, right? We're in this era, there's a lot of controversy, with people who pro-Israel, people who are pro-Palestine, and there's been a lot of conflict. And I feel like, I feel like there's been conflict within our own community where we live. And so we're not bringing people on, I've had people from the Jewish community come on in the first season, not talking particularly about being pro or anti anything, but just making sure that we have diverse representation,
yes, certainly.
Talking about different organizations that come on. And so I'm looking forward to, him giving his perspective on things and talking about the work that he actually does.
And hopefully, as we continue to line up our guests for this season, that we're going to have a social justice rabbi.
Yes,
that will be on the show.
Yes, yes. So,
and again, they won't necessarily be promoting that in an Israeli standpoint, but they will be promoting that of social justice across the board.
And primarily because this show is all about social justice, right? Agape is there.
And love.
And love. Agape is there for the love component.
Certainly.
There are people from different faiths who love God. We may not have the same scriptural text that we use, but there is a love for God, and that causes them to love people, right? And that's the overall theme of the show, and so that's why we're focusing on that. Social justice, meaning that we're looking at social issues. There are a lot of people who see social justice with this negative connotation, and they immediately go to politics. Right. There is an interconnection in terms of, I think it was Tia Marie who might have come on the show who talked about politics is really just policies, right? And how we implement policies in our everyday life. And so what I want people to understand is that when we're talking about social issues, that's what's happening in people's lives on a daily basis. Sometimes it's a situation that bubbles up and surfaces that we've never addressed before, but that we need to address it. It's not necessarily a partisan issue all the time because there are things that happen that affect everyone. And so we also want to make sure that we kind of explain, what do we mean by social justice?
And if we can't serve the people with love, we're not serving. Because when I think about our Lord and Savior Jesus, and it's not a religious program, Jesus is a king. And the Bible is actually a book about a kingdom. And when we think about king and kingdom has to have government. And when we speak of government as it relates to the Bible, we're talking about serving with love. So, that's exactly what we should expect in terms of from our government, from our politicians, from our statesmen and stateswomen, in terms of a service that's based around agape, around love. So, yes.
All right. I'm with it all day, every day, as you know. So in addition to them coming on, I want to have some segments where there's going to be an opportunity where you get to interview me. I've had a lot of people approaching me and asking me, what is it that you do? And my word was, it's complicated, right? Because sometimes I don't know how to juggle which hat I'm wearing at which moment. And so.
Oh, I know, because I've been explaining it to you. So what does your wife do? So, trust me.
It's kind of hard. But actually, Becky Lee told me, say nuanced. And I was like, oh, I kind of like that. But it gets difficult when, as an advocate, as an activist in the community, as you know, it's just like what we hear in the church, right? The work is plentiful, but the laborers are few. And so what you find are the same advocates in a lot of different spaces and taking up a leadership role when there is an absence of someone doing that. So we've experienced that in the church. Now we're experiencing that in the community. So I want to just kind of flesh out some of those things and why we do what we do in the community, what we're going to do moving forward. So that'll be coming up. And then I'm going to take a stab at doing a show where I am talking to the community. You know that I've had a lot of inner turmoil that has been going on. I'm a big big person on being led by the Spirit. Conviction often leads me in terms of what I say and do. And I'm at a crossroads. I'm honestly at a crossroads, and I'm struggling with taking in information that I've been receiving in terms of the political world. And in the last 2.5 years, I think I've probably heard and seen and experienced things that maybe people have told me about, but it's very different when you're experiencing it yourself, right? And so that has just created some conflict within me. I'm questioning a lot of things. I'm asking myself questions that I've never asked before. I'm going to just dig right deep into it and do an episode on that. And I know people are going to be uncomfortable with it. But I'm okay with that, because I think if we're not being honest and having honest conversations, what's the point of really doing this, right? There's no point. I think that the community expects us to be vulnerable, expects us to be transparent, and they want us to be authentic in terms of why we're saying what we're saying and doing what we're doing.
And leading with integrity.
Right.
I mean, that's the bottom line, integrity. And oftentimes there's an absence of that. And I'm not picking on any one particular party, but just in politics as a whole. And the point that I always like to make is that, I'm not looking for a politician. I'm looking for a statesman, a statesperson, a stateswoman. That's an individual that really has a martyr mentality. Not to say that our life may be required, but if we walk into a situation believing that I'm willing to give it all, that's the type of person that you want to serve you on a political level, on a governmental standpoint, because again, going back to our Lord and Savior, he put it all on the cross.
I'm glad you said that too, because when I do that political episode, I'm going to talk about what puts people in the position of not being a martyr, of not taking that risk and kind of laying it all on the line, because a lot of times there's fear, and I'm going to talk about where that fear comes from, right? Very few candidates do we see even running for office. I'm not even going to say getting elected and assuming a role, but running for office, they restrict themselves because of the perception that they think that people will have about them. And then there are other people who are just kind of honest all day, every day. That's just who they are. And then oftentimes they struggle with getting elected, because though we say that's what we want, there are people who prefer status quo, right? So I'm going to go into all of that dynamic in terms of what plays out in the political world.
And even though this isn't a political show, there may be a special unannounced guest that will appear on this show who we believe actually embodies exactly what we're talking about in terms of that agape love and willing to serve, and comes forth with a statesman, a statesperson, a stateswoman's attitude as it relates to the public and their position and responsibility. So we can't announce it yet, but I never know. Mm-hmm.
All right. And then there is, I don't know if I should call it a hot topic, because it's not really a hot topic. A lot of people still have not heard about the Willie Lynch letter, but it's something that has really been on my mind for years now. I think during the pandemic, when we saw a lot of the protests, had a lot of conversations with people about not just what's happening within the system and institutions, but what's happening in our own community, meaning the Black community.
And within our own families as well.
And within our own families. And so I've wanted to have this conversation for a long time, and we're going to go for it. We're just going to go for it on this show. And I know we will probably get some pushback. We'll probably get some eyebrows raised, but that's okay, because when you're talking about what really happens in our households, in our neighborhoods, in our communities, in our businesses, everywhere we go, we have to look at those systemic issues. And I'm particularly talking about systemic racist behaviors, processes that are in place within these institutions, but also things that we are perpetuating ourselves.
Our own personal psychology.
Exactly. And so we're going to delve into that. But let's...
And that might be a great conversation to have actually two guests on at the same time. that obviously are experts and have a lot to talk about as it relates to that subject. So we'll see. Yeah, may be able to may be able to interview two people at the same time, because that is a hot topic.
Yeah.
Like Wendy Williams, a hot topic. Mm-hmm.
So let's talk a little bit about the Willie Lynch letter, just to kind of give people a preview, because I feel like they're going to need to prepare for that episode before we actually do it, right? I mean, this is debatable. There are some people who think that the Willie Lynch letter is actually not a real letter, that someone created that. It's not real. So there's been a debate. But I know you've done a little bit of research on it. So do you want to mention that?
Yeah, they tend to believe that it's not a historical document. And, according to information that's out there, it came forth in 1712 from, as we know, slavery, the transatlantic slave market. It really went from Africa to that of South America, because that's where they indoctrinated, our captive African heritage, and then they brought us to the New World. Well, down there was a planter, there was a farmer, a plantation owner by the name of Willie Lynch, who had supposedly gone ahead and created some techniques and some processes to keep the captive African held at bay, and not just with the whip, not just with the chain, and not just with the rope, but with psychological manipulation. And it was really pitting us against one another. And that's the crux of the letter. And in this day and age, obviously, when you look at state legislation coming out of certain states, and again, I'm not trying to be political and whatnot, talk about Arkansas, talk about that of Florida, that information will be suppressed forever. No one will ever hear about it. And those are the main people that would like to say that, it is a contrived letter. But when we look at it from the effects of what the letter espouses today in our life, it just rings with that of truth. Or so I say, it rings true. I don't want to say truth, because truth never changes, but it rings true. So it's worth examining, because it's so applicable to what's going on in our lives. When we talk about colorism, sexism, and then when we even go further and talk about that of gender and gender preference and that type of thing, all of that comes into play in terms of how that letter espouses how you keep a nation, or how you keep a people divided amongst themselves, so that they are dependent upon that of the majority, or the superior, or the race that's in control. So it's going to be a real interesting conversation. And, as I think about one individual that I hope we get on the show to talk about, I mean, he's certainly going to go deep into it, because I know he's read the book, The Willie Lynch Letter and the Making of a Slave. Which is a valuable resource for anyone that's interested in that subject. As well as, if we bring back, one of my favorites and your favorites as well, and an ally of yours and best friend almost, that of Tia Marie, if she comes back and we have them on the same stage to talk about, we may actually have to do an hour on Willie Lynch. And like I say, some people may walk away offended in terms of our allies. Within the other communities, but sometimes, what's true needs to be told, and not only needs to be told, but it needs to be explained, so that people that may have participated in certain things, in terms of from a cultural standpoint, from a historical standpoint, can understand and be more accepting of the reality of where we are today. And maybe, just maybe, and not talking about Arkansas, not talking about that of Miami, Florida and whatnot, maybe we can have some type of apology. And that will bring forth the healing that we really need. Because if we don't want to acknowledge what has happened in the past, there's no guilt. And then because there's no guilt, there is no apology. There's no governance about yourself to really want to apologize and make this thing better. If we want to continue to hide what's true, what we're saying is that we don't want to acknowledge your hurt, so therefore it doesn't matter, and therefore get over it. So hopefully Willie Lynch will open up a conversation to that extent, and then we can take it to the next level.
And I think it's important to say, too, that it's not even just a matter of looking at states that are trying to erase our history and rewrite our history, but it's also our present day circumstances. And so we owe it to each other. We owe
Yes.
it to our community to talk about those things that have been perpetuated, that have conditioned us to think a certain way. And I think oftentimes because it comes out of a party that uses it, weaponizes that, and uses hatred in the midst of that conversation. And so it causes our community not to want to talk about it at all. It's tainted, right?
Yes.
And I think that we have to begin to become honest with ourselves and talk about those things we perpetuate. As you know, I'm a national facilitator for racial healing, solidarity, and justice, right? And so when I go into these courses, I'm asked to give my background or give an introduction or talk about my why. One of the things that I mention when I'm in class with people, I think the question is, when did I first experience race? What a lot of people don't know is I first experienced race or knowing about me being different, looking different, was in the Black community, was when I was growing up. It was from my family, my neighborhood, right? And that came in the form of colorism. And so that's one of the things that we can talk about as it relates to the Willie Lynch letter. Probably going to have to do more than one episode, right? Because it's so multi-layered in terms of how it impacts us. But colorism keeps us separated even still today. And that's why it's important for us to address those types of things that's mentioned in that letter.
Certainly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's pretty heavy. I know you guys, I know that's heavy. It is often a conversation that people try to avoid. I'm appealing to you right now. Please take a look it up, prepare yourself for when we do have that episode so you're familiar with the context and the background. What's the name of the book you mentioned?
Willie Lynch, The Making of a Slave.
And then that is secondary to actually just Googling the Willie Lynch letter, because that will give you the document that people have been debating for quite some time, if this is legitimate, if it's authentic. But we just want you to read it and prepare for that episode, and then we'll delve deeper when we have that guest on to talk about it. Part of what we want to do on this show is to not only educate people, but to bring forth things that are uncomfortable. We want you to feel discomfort. I know that sounds weird. Yes, we want you to feel discomfort, because it's only when we get out of that comfortable space that we begin to take a look in the mirror, that we begin to not only self-reflect, but look at the relationships that we have with people. We look at what we're doing in our career, what we're doing in our places of worship, how we interact with one another when we're in the community, how we serve. It's only until we begin to get uncomfortable and be willing to make these sacrifices that we can begin to shift the narrative that's happening regardless of political party, the narratives that are happening that impact us in our everyday lives. I don't know about you, but I don't feel like we've seen as much change as we could have. And I think part of it is because we're not having those uncomfortable conversations that we need to have.
So as we bring on guests, obviously some of them may be controversial, but again, it's going to be all in love. And as we attempt to vet people, as we bring them on board, again, we don't necessarily want to espouse a particular political agenda or promoting one against the other, but individuals that are going to come up and are going to come on the show and stir the pot. Right. Like you stir the pot.
Good trouble is what is good trouble is.
Right, exactly.
I almost wore the shirt that said good trouble today. But I actually want to start bringing on people who come from different perspectives, even if it's political. I want to have more of those individuals here. As you know, I brought on Marco da Silva, who is my red partner in Braver Angels. We're actually working with Braver Angels right now to potentially do some sort of recording about our story and how we don't necessarily agree on everything, but we were able to establish a relationship.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, to me, that's also a version of agape love, right? So I'm excited. I'm looking forward to season 2 coming and all of the people that we're going to bring forward. A lot of the difficult conversations, all the trolls who like to show up, especially if we try to promote something
And the
online.
merch that we're going to bring
Yes,
forward.
yes, yes. So
Yeah.
we have to talk about the merch. I'm just gonna be honest. It's kind of been. I'm not the graphic designer in the family. I'm not the creative. You and our girls are, more of the creatives in the family. But we do have some merch that is will be available for purchase on our website. Our website, by the way, is agapesocialjustice.com. So you will be able to go purchase a t-shirt. Again, thank you to the viewer who reached out to Rick TV Network and suggested that we get some merch together, that you want to buy the shirt. So we will have that available for you
And
for
some hoodies.
purchase.
You gotta have a hoodie too now.
Okay, well, we'll work on a hoodie, maybe some mugs, pens, different things like that we can have available.
Certainly.
I want by next summer for us to be in the community a little bit more, doing some things, maybe some vendor tables.
Yeah, some live broadcasts or some broadcasts on site, that type of thing. By all means.
Yeah,
certainly when we talk about Juneteenth celebrations. And one of my ideas in terms of Juneteenth is that in the metro area, we need a parade. You know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about a real parade in terms of where we demonstrate and we display, our brilliance and our accomplishments as it relates to that of us as an African American community. And what more appropriate day? Juneteenth. Just an idea. And certainly someone's going to pick up on it. And if they do, we'll be there, on site doing a little interview.
There was actually a parade. I know of at least one city that had a parade this past Juneteenth. I believe it might have been their second year. But I know your vision is much larger with
something like Texas, because Texas, they make it, whatever they do down there, they make it big. So they have a big parade or something like that.
Well, some things big are good, and some things big are not so good. But we will make sure we circle back to that idea as well. But I would love to get in the community, do some live shows as well. That's pretty exciting. But we'll do new and exciting things and delve deeper and get people out of their comfort zone.
Yes.
Right. So I also want to make another appeal for you guys to help us out on social media. We need to gain a following so that people can start getting into these conversations again, not to just educate, so that we can figure out how to create the change that we want. So go to Facebook. If you aren't a Facebooker and you're on Instagram, go to Instagram, Agape Social Justice. I was going to say Twitter again. On X, we are Agape Social Just. And on YouTube, please share our Agape Social Justice YouTube channel. And then that way you can go back and even watch old episodes. Under the community tab on Agape Social Justice, you can watch all of our prior episodes. And got to give a shout out before we leave to Rick TV Network.
Certainly.
Black owned TV network. Go to Rick TV, RICC.TV is where you can watch us, but then they also have a YouTube channel. You can go back and not only see our episodes, but there are other hosts who have shows, and we would love for you to watch them as well.
Certainly.
All right.
Because we've gotten a lot of great feedback from the show. However, they haven't put it on their social media.
Yes. So I'm told our age bracket doesn't do a whole lot of commenting. You guys, we need you to comment, not just DMing us and texting us, but having a conversation online as well. But we thank you for tuning in to starting out with season 2 with us. And we look forward to seeing you down the road. Take care. Blessings.
God bless.